Call Bronco Plumbing and Heating. Hopefully your furnace isn't breaking down in this weather. Oh, I don't know what it's like in the left coast there this week, Glenn, but we are in a deep freeze here in Saskatchewan. Do you remember what Canada hockey, what do you remember any, like the Olympics, obviously, in Vancouver? You're probably out there hooting and hollering.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, the Olympics and my former partner and still great friend, Chris Cuthbert's call of the winning goal, just money from the booth. Not totally expected it because he's such a pro. I remember Nagano too, though. And I remember making the comparison from the booth when in the Grey Cup, Dave Dickinson was the starting quarterback for the BC Lions, and they had Casey Printers. Remember Casey Printers?
Oh, yeah.
So Casey Printers comes off the bench early that season and is a phenom. He has a phenom year, like just this off the hook, 6,000 yards, that type of year, and could run around all over the gym. It was just this magnificent year. Dickinson comes back and plays in the Grey Cup when he wasn't completely healthy. Now, no shot at Dave Dickinson. He still reminds me that I've said this on the air, by the way. Like, we'll have a conference call and he goes, yeah, well, I guess Printers should have played that game or whatever. So, but I thought they should have played Printers. Printers was the MVP of the league, and the BC Lions lost the Grey Cup. I compared that coaching decision by the GOAT, by the way, Wally Guano, who's the best coach of all time.
Gretzky shootout.
Yes. I compared the coaching decision between those two events, that in Nagano with Gretzky sitting on the bench. I don't care if he wasn't great in breakaways, or that is overthinking it. This is the best player in the world. He has got to shoot. He's got to shoot just so everybody else takes notice. The goalie gets a little yips. Who knows? But Ray Bourque shooting and Gretzky not shooting, I was like, and Mark Crawford was at the same club that my son played hockey at and I coached at. And believe me, we have had a few beverages and discussed this.
Nice. It's funny because I think Harry was it Shanahan who shot last, and then Bob Cole's like, he's got to score. He's got it. No. That was it. And we were all just like, no. Like, what? So, funny story about that, Glenn, while we're here, is when we interviewed Theo Fleury on our podcast years ago, he talked about being there, and all of a sudden they were like, okay, well, it's a shootout. And the guys on the bench were like, what? Say that again. It's like, yeah. And then so they're figuring out the shooters. I think Theo shot. Can you get the 5 shooters for Canada at Nagano, Colson, quickly? Sorry. But the other thing he said was that was long before some genius came up with the let's clear the ice before a shootout with the Zambonis. And he talked about how bad the ice was. And we're like, oh, maybe you have a deke that you always go to. And then when we interviewed Eric Lindros, I asked him about that too. And he said that ice was so bad, it was like playing in a bad outdoor shinny rink, But yeah, the Gretzky thing, that's one that'll live forever, right? It was
well, and the question too, Barney, is who made the decision? Because Mark Crawford and I have talked about it before, and I never really got a clear picture after the kind of conversation we had. Was it Bobby Clark? Because he was kind of the manager of that team, right? Like he was the guy who put it together. And then didn't he, and correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm going off memory, but didn't he make Lindros his captain of that Team Canada? You have Wayne Gretzky on the bench, and I think he made Eric Lindros the captain, right? Or they decided that he would be the captain.
I'm looking at the picture right now. Eric Lindros is the captain.
Yeah.
Of that
and
team.
again, like all due respect to Eric Lindros and his career and him as a player at that time, but you have the greatest player in the world, and maybe of all time in the world, and he's not your captain, and he doesn't shoot in the playoffs or in the shootout. Like, I don't know. I've always wondered how much coaches really can influence a hockey game when the lines are just rolling and the power play and all that. But there's an example of how important coaching is in hockey as well.
Yeah. Oh man, we could sit here and talk about that for a long time. We have him coming up later in in hour 3 here again from hour 1. Tommy Stevens joined us on the program. What a guy. Seems, I don't know if you've ever had a chance to interview him, Glenn. Harry and I talked to him. Like, what a good dude. He'll be a fan favorite here.
Yeah, he will. He will. And here's a quick story. When Dustin Nielsen and I were in the booth, and we were picking, I mentioned it a couple weeks ago, we were picking our best short yardage quarterback. Who would be your fantasy league short yardage quarterback? And I picked Tommy Stevens, and he goes, "Oh, you can't have first pick, blah, blah, blah." We had a fight about that. But Tommy Stevens heard us talking about him and went on social media and said something about, because I'm not sure if we said he's not a starter yet or something. I can't remember why he was upset, but he went on social media and actually reached out to both and commented on Dustin and I talking about him. And I thought, this guy is a ton of fun. Like, hey, this guy is going to be great for the locker room. And he's a bull. Like, he's an absolute bull. If you're watching the stream right now, man, you get a great example of what he's capable in short yardage.
And people can listen to it later. He talks about how he's the smallest one at the dinner table in the Stevens household when they're all eating. So he comes from a big family. Anything today in free agency, Glenn? And I've asked a few guys this. Any of the signings that I guess everything was kind of what we expected. There's a few here and there. Anything stand out to you?
Yeah, the one that does big time is Jeremiah Masoli in Vancouver. Nathan Rourke is obviously the starter in Vancouver, but after that, they're pretty young. And to bring in Jeremiah Masoli, who I think has still got a ton of football left in him, is a major move for the Lions. I mean, anytime that Nathan might get nicked, might have to miss a couple games, the best of them have, and he has too back in 22. You got a starter. It's kind of like when the Riders got Jake Maier. When they signed Jake Maier, they got their insurance policy there of a guy who's proven that he can win.
Sorry, Harry, I thought you were going to go.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah, and after talking to Tommy Stevens, though, I'm like, hey, this guy wants a chance to sling it around the yard as well.
Yep.
And the thing is, we found out last year, can never have enough offensive linemen that are, especially experienced offensive linemen. So Philippe Gagnon, the Riders pick up for Montreal. Yeah. What do you know about him? He's been around the league a long time.
Yeah. Excellent. And that was sort of the Peter Godber, like with Gagnon, you got a guy who is proven veteran offensive lineman. And before we came on today, I looked at the offensive line on the website for the Riders and just sort of looked down there. There's a couple of guys still out there in free agency, like Isaiah Cage, but you don't want to overspend for an American O-lineman when I think you can, as long as you have in your top 8 or 9, as long as you have, what you think you can win with, and then you're bringing in young guys to develop them and get them to learn the nuances. So I think, there's a couple of guys still out there. I thought Habel was a big signing. I think Tyrell Ford was one of the biggest in free agency when he went to Edmonton from the Bombers. The Bombers have lost a few players now, and, they're not going to have Big Hill back. I know Rider fans are always kind of looking just to the province over next to them saying, what are the Bombers doing? And that's the team to beat until they're not. So they're going to have an interesting training camp and preseason. I'm going to be like, what is this team going to look like? They lost some people. Kenny Lawler was another one.
They're definitely going to have a mixer just to reintroduce everybody. All the new faces are going to have hello, my name is stickers on.
Yes, yes. I've been in locker rooms like that where you're
Yeah.
you walk in and halfway through the season you're trying to introduce yourself to in fact I've done it in the huddle. We get out on the field and we're in the huddle in a game and I go, "Oh, you're a new halfback. I'm Glenn, I'm the safety."
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know you, and I don't know you either.
Yeah. I know you. You taught my wife scuba diving in the Cayman Islands. I talked to you after the game, Glenn. No, but like,
I know we got to go quickly, guys. But what about the Super Bowl? Like, Barney, first of all, how much money did you win? Secondly, like,
I never say.
Okay, well, I know you won because we both took the Eagles going in last week. I remember that. And I only did it because, and I never make picks, especially not in Canadian games, but I only did it because I've been burned by great defenses. Defenses in the NFL in the championship game seem to be the difference maker. Like, I don't think you can say the same thing about CFL football. I think so many things can happen because there's so many different possessions and the rules sort of allow for that. But you get down 2 or 3 scores in the NFL, like in the Super Bowl at halftime, it's pretty much game over. I got to mention this because broadcasting is so subjective. I mean, both Harry and Barney, you guys could discuss what Dustin and I do or Rod Smith and I do in the booth, and you could both be in completely different planets, like with different ideas. And I like this, I don't like when he says that. It's very subjective. But I thought, and I don't know about you guys, but I thought the booth was calling the game from Kansas City's perspective. It was when Patrick Mahomes got sacked 3 times in the first half and had 20 yards of offense, it was Patrick Mahomes is not comfortable. It was the offensive line is playing terrible. They're having a real rough time with it. He's got to get the ball out of his hands. And what I mean by that, and again, very subjective, and sometimes the broadcast booth is trying to prop up the team that's behind in order to hold viewers. There's a little behind the curtain that we definitely try to do. Like you're trying to hold viewers, you're trying to keep them interested. You don't want to make stuff up, which I think at times happened in the Super Bowl. They were down 5 scores and they were still going, if Kansas City, and I went, you guys, come on, it's over. It is over. The fourth quarter it's an over quarter. But I found it interesting, not right or wrong, just different, that Tom Brady in the booth called this Super Bowl championship from Kansas City's perspective.
Were you surprised, as a guy that's been around football a lot, and we talked about so much on Kansas City's coaching staff and how smart they were, and they are probably Hall of Famers, and like they're fantastic, and part of the reason they got there, winning those close games this year, the blitz against Buffalo off the edge from Spagnuolo. They, at halftime, which is the longest halftime you're going to get because there's the performances, they come out and there seemed to be no change in game plan from the Chiefs or any tweaks or surprises. It was like, okay, now let's get back out there and get our faces smashed in even more.
Yeah, but I would just move it up. I was more surprised that there wasn't adjustments made after the first quarter, not after halftime. After halftime, what was the score? They were down, I think, by 3 possessions, right? At halftime. I'm pretty sure it was 3 possessions. At that point in the NFL, you're thinking, how many possessions are we going to realistically have in the second half? Probably not many. We're down by 3, so we need 4 possessions with majors to win. So we got to go out and sling it and just try to make those intermediate plays, even though our quarterback does not have the time to do it. The adjustments, to me, should have been made in the first quarter when they knew they were having troubles up front with the front four for the Eagles, and the Eagles weren't blitzing, by the way. In fact,
They didn't blitz once. They didn't blitz once.
Nope. Was it? Okay, yeah, I didn't see the final stats on it, but I know when I was tracking it in the first 3 quarters, I thought they're going with a 4-man pressure every single time, and they are causing nothing but havoc. So when that happens, the adjustment is run game, first of all, so that those defensive linemen have to pause on the line of scrimmage to play their run gap responsibility. And then from there, you go to screen draw. Quick screens outside, try to make one guy miss, draw on screens to your tailback, those kind of things to slow that pass rush down. There was no adjustments made after the first quarter in that. And then when they got to halftime in the third quarter, now they're down by 4 scores, and they're like, we got to throw a bomb every play to see if we can come back here. But it was game over, which is, by the way, something the booth never said. And I understand it because I've been there. A blowout is the toughest game to call. That's when people ask me about biased, guys, I always say I'm not biased for one team or another. Honestly, I'm not. I'm biased that we have a great game. That's what I'm biased about. If we don't have a great back and forth game, it's bad for TV ratings. It's simple as that. So when I was listening, thinking, okay, guys, at some point here in the fourth quarter, you got to say this baby's done.
It's cooked, as the kids say. It's cooked. Okay, so we get to catch up with you again on Thursday, and then next week we'll talk about it on Thursday. Your big vacation and your big trip. It's pretty exciting. Always a pleasure,
Great.
Glenn. Have a good one. We'll talk to you in a couple days.
Sounds good, guys. Appreciate it.
Have a good
press
week.
coverage.